He suddenly came into existence one day. This existence wondered what was the best word that could describe it. One day he was a fish swimming in a nearby lake or a bird flying high in the sky, and on other days he was an ant crawling on the ground. From spring straight until winter. That is how it has lived and died multiple times as many different organisms. Once again, he was caught and killed by the same species as before. It has millions of years worth of memories, and the only beings that it was hostile towards were humans. It was fine with being killed and devoured by other organisms since it was the natural law of nature. However, humans were the only beings that killed for enjoyment. As its life was now fading away, it kept wondering what organism it would be reborn as again and why it had the ability to reborn. As its life came to an end, the process of being reborn started. The more it felt while being reborn, the higher the chance of it being at the top of the food chain in its next life. As it slowly opened its eyes, it could instantly tell what kind of organism it was reborn as just by seeing the face that was tenderly looking at it. The only being that it was hostile towards throughout its entire lifetime was humans. Lee Jane, hearing his name being called, was something new for him since it was the first that he had a name. Ja-en thought that the lives of humans were weird. They were all alive, yet they drew strong distinctions between countries and races. They named everything in the world and gave it meaning. Jane's mother had taken him to the doctor to find out why he couldn't talk, but the doctor simply told her that he was only 6 and that she should give him some more time to grow up. She then told the doctor that it wasn't even the real issue since Ja-en doesn't show any response whenever she tries to interact with him. The doctor then thought that the problem might be something psychological and recommended she take him to a psychiatrist. Jane's mother had no plans on taking her son to a hospital for psychos. The name of Jane's mother was Youngshil. To Ja-en, she was very stupid and ignorant. She had lost her parents to a war and then lost her husband to another war not long after. To her, the world was very harsh, and at one point she really wanted to give up on everything, but she couldn't do that when she had Ja-en to take care of. She worked hard day after day to take care of Ja. As both Ja-en and Youngshil had arrived home and were in bed, Youngshil told Ja-en the same things that she had told him every night, even though she had never received a response, which was that she loved him. Jane couldn't understand what she said and why she kept saying it, but the warm feeling that he felt didn't dislike it. For Ja-en, this life differed from all of his other lives, and there was one reason why that was the case. It was dark outside, and everyone should have been in their homes at that time getting ready to go to sleep. However, for one man who was currently running for his life, being safe at home was his only wish in that moment. As he ended up falling to the ground and being caught by his pursuers, he thought that his end had finally come. In that exact moment, they all noticed Ja-en, who was standing on a pole high above ground. One of the men told Ja-en to come down since it was dangerous for a kid to be so high up. Ja thought that this was the best opportunity for him to test it out. Ja-en suddenly used the abilities of a frog to land safely on the ground, which surprised everyone since that was not possible for a child. Ja-en then used the fast speed of a cheetah to close the distance between him and the men that he was after. One of the men had taken out their gun after witnessing what was happening, but he didn't get the chance to do anything after he was hit by Ja, and while he was using the strength of a dinosaur. After using his abilities, Jane was sure that it was an ability that he didn't have before. He could use the abilities of all the previous organisms that he was before. He wondered why it was possible for him, but he had no idea. One thing was clear to him though, and that was that this life was the end of his long journey. This was his last life, as the other men were still in shock after what they had just witnessed. Ja-en turned around with a smile on his face, as now he could finally truly die. After witnessing what had happened, one of the other guys decided to take the initiative and attack Jinha head-on, which he ended up landing the blow. The man had hoped that one hit would have ended the fight, but surprisingly, Jinha simply stood back up after stating that it hurt. Jinha had come to the conclusion that if he didn't manifest his powers, then he was just like any normal human. The man then decided to go for another attack, but this time it didn't go through, and he ended up breaking his own arm after Jinha had manifested the abilities of a turtle. Jinha grabbed the man by the neck, and after confirming that he could become anything he wanted once he manifested his powers, he was about to go ahead and kill the man. However, right before he could kill him, he was suddenly shot by the man who was being chased before. After Jinha acknowledged that he had made a mistake, he ended up fainting. A few hours had passed since Jinha was injured, and he had finally woken up. He did not know what the weapon was called that injured him, but he knew for a fact that he was in a lot of pain since the bullet had pierced his internal organs. Jinha lay on the ground and wondered if he was going to die again, but due to his survival instincts, he had activated his ability and was able to heal himself. He had thought that there was nothing left for him to experience in life, but that seems to be a lie. He then wondered how such a small body could possess so much power. Standing out in the fields, Jaheen could hear his mother desperately looking for him and calling his name to the point where she was disturbing all of the surrounding neighbors. After catching a random bird flying around in the fields, Jaheen thought that even though he was still a child, he could hunt for himself and, as such, did not need his mother anymore. Jaheen hesitated for a moment after remembering the countless nights that he had slept with his mother and the feeling he felt every time she had told him that she loved him, but he decided to leave in the end. For 4 days straight, Jinha was walking around out in the sun without eating or drinking anything, and finally he had collapsed from exhaustion. As Jinha lay on the ground, he wondered what the problem was and why he was suffering so much. Jaheen had lived countless lives, but this was the first time that he had felt such a feeling. He felt death nearing closer, which he welcomed since he didn't have any regrets at all. He did not end up reaching death's door since his mother had suddenly shown up not looking much better than he did. Youngshil was so happy to have finally found her son to the point where she burst into tears. Jinha had thought that he was going to die, but after his mother had embraced him in her arms, all of his worries started fading away. The only thought that he had was that he was hungry and he wanted food that was made by his mother. Jinha decided to speak for the first time since he was born in order to make his mother stop crying. Jinha had told his mother the one thing that she kept telling him every night before bed, "I love you," which totally caught his mother by surprise. He had intended to stop crying, but what he said had made him cry even more. His mother held him in her arms while he gently watched the sunset in the distance that he thought was beautiful for some reason. Jaheen then thought that there was nothing wrong with him staying with his mother for a bit longer until he became independent. The man who was being chased at night and had shot Jinha was in a room being questioned about what had taken place that night. The man then stated everything that had happened. He also stated that he had killed Jaheen, but when asked where the body was, he couldn't say anything since Jaheen's body was not at the scene where he had killed him. He tried to defend himself, but the detective wasn't going to believe him at all. He then turned to the other detective who was there with him and saw when he had killed Jaheen, but the detective pretended that nothing that he had stated happened. Since no one believed what he was saying, he ended up being taken away in the end. After Jaheen had run away before, his mother always held his hands, thinking that he would get lost again if she didn't watch him closely. Every time his mother smiled at him, Jaheen felt a warm feeling, which he didn't dislike at all. He didn't hate what Youngshil was doing for him, which could turn out to be very dangerous for him. Jaheen had ended up getting into a fight at school, and so his mother was called in. After hearing that Jaheen had gotten hit, she couldn't keep calm at all, and so the teacher tried to intervene in the conversation, but even he couldn't calm her down. Jaheen then took notice that his mother was very nice, but she was only nice to him. When the old ladies in the village would gossip about Jaheen not being able to talk and is always spacing out, Youngshil would immediately go over and interrupt them. Even when she was at the local market and someone wanted her to move, she would argue with them until they had no choice but to leave her alone. Time had passed just like that, and Jaheen had gotten used to a human's body and living like one in everyday life. Youngshil had taken a flower and put it in her and asked Jaheen what he thought, but again, she didn't receive a response. She told Jaheen that it was lunchtime and then took his hand to leave. While they were walking, Jahin asked her why she was fighting against the whole world, and she simply told him that everything she did was all so that she could protect him. Jahin had come to the realization that the one thing he didn't want to happen had ended up happening, and as a result, he had gotten attached and didn't want to leave Yungshil. He really wanted to spend more time with his mother, but their time together was soon coming to an end as he had been found by one of the detectives. Survival of the fittest, where the weak becomes prey for the strong. It was a law that applied to every single being in the world. However, there were some deaths that just could not be understood. It was now 12 years since Jahin was reborn, and he had now gotten used to living in human society. A lot had changed over those 12 years in the sense that buildings where he lived had gotten much taller and they now had straighter roads, and even factories had begun appearing, which caused his mother to become sick. Food that he instinctively did not like and had decided not to eat because it had been polluted ended up being eaten by Yunshil, which was why she had become sick. After coming home and taking care of his mother, he decided that it was time for him to go to school and then got up and left. Instead of going to school like he said he would, Jin had gone to the local market to sell some apples. While he was there, he wondered why humans had to destroy everything for their own comfort and wondered why his mother had to be the one in pain. The detective then came over and decided to buy one of his apples since they looked good. The detective then took a bite out of one of the apples and told him that it was good while looking him directly in the eye. The detective then stated that he had planned on visiting him earlier, but he wanted to see how a monster grew up. He then asked Jinha why he was pretending to be human, but Jinhan didn't respond to him at all. They then decided to handcuff him and take him back with them, and to their surprise, Jinhan didn't resist at all. The detective then asked him if he was okay being taken so easily. He also told him that he was being investigated for espionage and that if he was a spy, then his mother would be too, and that he had already sent someone to get her. After hearing what the detective said, Jinhan activated his ability in front of everyone who was present at the market. He then left and headed towards where his mother was. The detective who called him a monster had severely underestimated Jinhan, and so that day he became a living disaster. The reason why humans were considered the center of the world's dispute over their weak constitution was because of language. Their sophisticated way of communicating allowed them to form groups and develop faster than any other species. Jinhan kept running nonstop towards where his mother was. Even when he was tired, he didn't stop to take a break and just kept pushing forward using his abilities. Back at the local market, two other detectives that saw what happened at the market sat down together and were talking about what they had seen. They were surprised that a 12-year-old boy could be a spy and thought that it was unnecessary for the captain to mobilize so many people just to capture him. The officers that were sent to get Jinhan's mother had arrived at their house and planned on dragging her out. Before they could enter the house, though, Jinhan landed right behind them, panting after running such a long distance for so long. The officers wondered where he suddenly appeared from and asked him if he was the one who lived there. After Jinhan had responded to their question, they also thought that the captain might have made a mistake but decided to take him in anyway. Jinhan was about to attack them, but his mother opened the door and asked what was going on. Even though they saw that Jinhan's mother was sick, they had to take both of them in since they had to follow orders. After seeing that they were trying to take her son, Yungshil got up and started yelling that they were being kidnapped in order to draw everyone's attention. The men wondered how she had that much strength to yell so loudly and thought that she must be a spy. One of the men then decided to slap Yungshil in order to keep her quiet. However, Jinhan, who had witnessed it, was not going to just let it slide. In that moment, Jinhan decided to abandon his sanity and just go all out. In the blink of an eye, Jinhan had killed all of the men that had come to capture them, with his mother witnessing everything that had happened. Yunshil then called out to Jinhan, who was covered with blood. He then turned around to his mother's sad face as she cried for him. The captain then showed up in an armored vehicle with more men to capture Jinhan. After seeing the bodies surrounding Jinhan, The captain was finally able to prove his point that Jinhan was indeed a monster and told them not to go easy on him if they didn't want to get killed. Jinhan planned on just killing everyone that was there, but Yushil rushed in front of him and started shouting at the men that she was the one who had killed everyone and that Jinhan didn't do anything wrong. Yungshil, who barely had any energy to eat, was running around like crazy, which reminded Jinhan of what his mother had told him when he asked her why she was always fighting. For the first time since he had been reborn as a human, Jinhan was crying. The captain stood there for a second and then took out his gun. He planned on killing her with one shot, but decided to shoot her in the leg first. Jinhan wasn't going to let his mother get hurt, and so he blocked the bullet. The captain started laughing after figuring out Jinhan's weakness and then told everyone that they should aim for Yunshil instead of shooting at Jinhan directly. One of his men then told him that since they were not resisting capture, there was no need to use violence. The captain wasn't just going to easily capture them and pretend like nothing had happened. He told all of them if they didn't want to end up like the other dead officers lying around, then they better follow his orders. The captain then gave the order for them to shoot, and all of them fired their guns without hesitation. Jinhan was determined to protect Yungshil, and so he had activated his abilities to the extreme in order to block the bullets that were coming at them. Jinhan used the ability of an armadillo and blocked all of the bullets that were coming at them all while protecting Yunshil, who was surprised by what was happening before her. After they had stopped firing, Jinhan was still standing before them, which shocked even the captain. He then told everyone to keep shooting. Jinhan was ready to use his abilities one more time to protect Yungshil, but she suddenly came in front of him and blocked all of the bullets that were aimed at them after whispering to Jinhan that it was okay. She then fell to the ground and tried to tell Jinhan one more time what she had always told him every night, but no words were coming out of her mouth. Using his abilities, Jinhan was able to talk with his mother one last time. He was crying so much, even though he didn't cry at all when he was born. He then told Yungshil that he didn't know what to do and that he was sorry for everything. Yungshil then told him that he didn't need to apologize, as his being born as her son was the greatest gift. Yungshil had ended up passing away in the end, and now it doesn't matter what Jinhan had to do or who he had to kill, he was going to fulfill his mother's last dying wish, which was for him to stay alive no matter what. You might be wondering why the captain was so obsessed with Jahin. There were a lot of reasons why, but the main reason was because of pride. Humans take pride in being able to understand the things around them and fear the things they don't understand, which was why he tried to end things. Yungshil's words still echoed in Jinhan's mind, telling him to stay alive no matter what. As he stood there for a while, he thought to himself that there was no way for him to coexist with humans. He might end up hurting another human again, somewhere along the line in life. Jinhan had finally come to the conclusion that no matter what, he was going to fulfill his mother's last wish, no matter what, and stay alive. He then turned his back and started running away. He gave the captain one last look before leaving. The captain then told everyone to chase after him since he was getting away. The captain then told everyone to get in the vehicle and that this was their chance to get him since he was now weak. The sun was now setting on the horizon, and the captain still kept the chase going, not giving Jinhan a chance to rest at all. They chased him through the garden that was full of memories of him and his mother. Jinhan decided that he had enough of running and stopped. The captain and everyone then got out of the vehicle, wondering why he had suddenly